Minato the Yellow Flash versus Sasuke's older brother is a heavily debated topic for very good reasons. It involves two of the greatest and most popular characters who get hyped up numerous times by both the verse and the fans of the series, and mixing those with the wincons both of these guys have against each other make for a fun and intriguing matchup. But what if I tell you this is actually a mismatch and isn't close at all? To get deeper into the specifics of this fight, I'll strictly be using sick Itachi as he appears in the Sasuke fight versus alive Hokage Minato. The reason I chose these exact forms is because if we take Edo Minato, it's only fair to use Edo Itachi, and at that point it's a whole different conversation, and any other version of Itachi than Sick and Edo is pure headcanon or part 1, which would get swamped badly by Minato. So this is, in my opinion, the most fair way to compare these two living counterparts, and it just so happens a lot of Minato versus Itachi debates do come down to these two specifically, so it's what we're gonna roll with. I will also be using the manga and maybe going into the data books if I needed to back up certain claims or points I make, so no anime only stuff or filler nonsense. I don't want any Itachi can use the Susanoo while not being inside of it type claims to be made. Anyways, let's get into the video. In this matchup, there are quite a few things to tackle like Amaterasu, Genjutsu, Itachi's Susanoo with the Yaramir and Totsuka blade, Minato's flying Raijin, Minato's speed, Itachi's health issues, just to name a few. So I will try and leave timestamps below so you can skip ahead and look at each of these, but if you do that, keep in mind I will be mentioning other things that have relevance and importance towards those points while talking about other abilities and such. So for a more coherent explanation, I'd recommend just watching the video through so you can get a grasp onto how I'm actually going about this. With all of that said though, feel free to skip through to hear specific arguments if you need. When it comes to any versus battle including Minato, speed is always the #1 factor for this guy, and the first thing people usually bring up to establish either if he's flat out blitzing his opponent, which is not the case here, or that he's just typically a quicker fighter than his opponent, and in this case it shouldn't really be a surprise that he is. In my opinion, it's not really necessary at this point to give a full speed breakdown and scale Minato's speed because most already do know or have a good general idea to where he places, but all throughout the manga he is hailed as the fastest shinobi, which the counter I hear a lot to these statements mainly are saying that it's in reference to his flying Raijin jutsu, but that's only one part of the story. There are still other things that factor into overall speed, like combat speed and travel speed. So yes, while Minato can teleport instantly, that doesn't mean he instantly attacks unless he teleports directly onto his opponent. Like I said though, there are a monumental amount of statements praising Minato's speed and saying he is the fastest shinobi when alive, and since his speed is brought up for a large majority of his counters to Itachi's jutsus, I will be able to go more in depth in those sections. Adding into this section about speed, let's talk about Itachi's stamina and health issues in this fight. A huge misconception still plaguing the community is what exactly was happening during his fight with Itachi, so let's lay this all out. Yes, he was sick and on death's door. Yes, he was sandbagging the fight and wasn't fighting with the intent to kill, but that does not mean he was lowering his durability or purposely letting himself get hit, because that wouldn't make any sense. His goal was to fight Sasuke to a stalemate and have Orochimaru emerge so he can kill him. That was Itachi's goal, so there are quite literally zero reason to let himself get hit on purpose or to let Sasuke out of the Tsukuyomi and fake that it got broken, because like, come on, it's basically the big 2025. We can't still be thinking Itachi let Sasuke break out of that Tsukuyomi. It's stated in one of the data books, I think it was data book 3, that Sasuke did in fact break through the Genjutsu because of his masterful use of the Sharingan. With that being said though, I will admit that Itachi could have done a lot more in the Tsukuyomi, but just didn't. So all I'm trying to get at here is while Itachi was fighting to not kill Sasuke, he still had to fight him to where Sasuke was out of chakra, which would be a lot more difficult if Itachi was like, yeah, just let me hold back my physical stats, which is it's just that doesn't happen. That whole Itachi stuff was basically set up for this next point I'm going to make right now. This will not be a long drawn out fight. In character, Minato fights fast and basically instantly tries to go for the kill or to end the whole situation as fast as possible. This is seen time and time again, which there are a few times where he teleports to someone and doesn't instantly go to unalive them, but this is all while he was a Jonin, and every time the situation arrived while he was Kage, he would go for the kill off rip. For example, against Obito during the Ninetales attack, he teleported onto him directly with his attack instantly, and since we are using the Hokage Minato in this matchup, those other times don't really bother me too much since it could just be a tactic he didn't implement yet back then. This obviously plays well in Itachi's favor because of his sickness and blindness. The longer the fight goes on, the greater the disadvantage for Itachi is, and it should go without saying that it would go pretty handedly for Minato if this were the case. Saying Itachi is beating Minato isn't that crazy of a take, but saying he can do it without his eyes at all is quite delusional. After that whole yap session, let's finally get into how these two interact while on the battlefield, because without needing to preface the stamina, speed, and sandbagging issues, this should go swiftly from here on out. Amaterasu is weird, and straight away I want to talk about the Zetsu statement because it's very outlandish to me and just false. And the exact one I'm talking about is him saying it's the strongest ninjutsu. The actual statement is, if the left eye's Mangekyo possessed the most powerful Genjutsu, the right eye's Mangekyo possessed the most powerful physical attack. Which I completely disagree with the categorization of most powerful, because we've seen things massively eclipse the Amaterasu, like truth-seeking orbs, which are just way better in every way, and are also a ninjutsu. Aside from that though, I would like to call this statement into question for two other reasons. When watching the fight, Zetsu sees Itachi use hand signs and says, "Is this it, the Amaterasu?" Which we know the jutsu doesn't need hand signs, and when also explaining it, he uses wording such as "it's said," which to me implies he's heard of the jutsu, but he himself has never seen it or is actually too familiar with how it fundamentally works. So it's a very weird thing to me that someone who, in my opinion, isn't even familiar with the Amaterasu in the slightest can claim it's the most powerful ninjutsu. I've also heard the interpretation that Zetsu is referencing Itachi's strongest ninjutsu and genjutsu, and not just that of the overall verse, which could be a fair interpretation all things considered, but I personally don't subscribe to that analysis and rather am with the Zetsu is clueless when it comes to this jutsu. There is more I can talk about, like the actual strength of Amaterasu, because I low-key think it kind of sucks, but I'll skip past that because realistically it's not like it's hitting Minato, which shouldn't come as a surprise in the slightest. We know it's dodgeable and avoidable because the Raikage moved out of the way from it against Sasuke, and the Raikage is self-admitted slower than Jonin Minato, so yeah, Minato reacts faster than the Raikage can move and instantly teleports due to flying Raijin, so if the Raikage can dodge it, Minato can too. That's not really hard to understand. And quickly before I end this point, this was Jonin Minato that the Raikage is always in reference to. You can see when he talks about Minato being faster. In the flashbacks, it's always about Jonin Minato. And there are many things throughout the series and data books that imply he became stronger after being appointed as Hokage. What Amaterasu can do though is cover Minato's flying Raijin kunai that he scatters all over the ground, which is a good tactic and one many people bring up. But when we're talking about sick Itachi, we need to keep in mind his blindness and stamina issues for jutsus like this. We see in the very beginning of the Sasuke Itachi fight that he was on the verge of blindness with his eyesight being terrible. Granted, this was after Tsukuyomi usage, but the point still stands. And after using 5 Amaterasu, one of his eyes goes completely blind, and the other one follows suit instantly after he activates his Susanoo, which doesn't give him a whole lot to actually use before he's completely blind, meaning he can't afford to use Amaterasu all willy-nilly, and actually has to preserve the jutsu because let's think about this, right? Let's say he uses them on the kunai Minato teleports to, then there goes all of his Amaterasu shots, and that's basically it for Itachi's eye, hindering him and just all around wasting so much chakra and eye fatigue that's not needed. On top of this tactic kind of being kind of useless in my opinion, because Minato doesn't need to teleport exactly on the seal, he can teleport in that close general direction. So unless you're gonna say Itachi uses Amaterasu and it covers that whole area, which once again is useless because Minato can just place seals on the ground or nearby landscape itself, so there really will be zero counter to Minato being able to evade and teleport away. This whole strat gets enhanced like crazy when you take into consideration Minato's tendencies to place seals on people themselves, and once that happens, it's completely wraps for Itachi. He can just teleport Itachi into a sealing jutsu or keep him stashed in like some flying rise in time space if that gimmick does work, or teleport straight onto him with a Rasengan, so there's no counter to that happening if it does. And since Itachi off the bat doesn't use his Susanoo, this outcome is very possible. I want to finish talking about Amaterasu because I've been on it for a large section of this video. So moving on, let's talk about Itachi's Susanoo and more specifically the Yadamir and the Totsuka Blade. It's honestly a meme at this point for people saying Totsuka Blade GG or Yadamir GG when it comes to any Itachi versus battles, but it's facts. If he hits Minato with the Totsuka Blade, he's done, and Minato can do nothing to break past that Yadamir. The thing is though, and I hate to harp on this, Minato is fast and can teleport instantly anywhere. There is no restriction. As long as he has the seal, it's done. So I really don't believe Itachi will be able to hit Minato with the Totsuka Blade, and I don't want to get into any Edo Itachi versus Nagato debates, but the Totsuka Blade has no real speed feats, and Itachi using the Susanoo off-rip will not only blind him almost instantly, but it's also out of character for him to do so, so this isn't really something I'm concerned about when it comes to this battle. If it did happen as soon as the battle starts for the sake of this argument, it genuinely is a waiting game until he inevitably loses his eyesight or deactivates it because he realizes it's no use in a battle like this. If Itachi uses it later on in the fight, we saw what happens when he's already drained and uses it. I don't need to bring it up, and if Minato does have that flying Raijin mark placed on Itachi, he can teleport right to him or teleport him out, rendering the Susanoo useless. So let's just move past this. Let me finally address the elephant in the room here, Genjutsu. Now, Tsukiyomi, I don't need to say anything further than if it hits Minato, it's game over, Itachi wins. There's nothing you could say against that. The only thing stated and proven to beat the Tsukiyomi, Minato doesn't have, so that's that. The only counter to Tsukiyomi Minato has, which isn't a counter really, but more of a deterrent against Itachi using it, would be to use shadow clones in the hope that Itachi uses Tsukiyomi on the clone, and it burns a chunk out of his health and allows for Minato to get a solid opening for attack. And this shadow clone usage also helps play a part in countering Itachi's normal Genjutsu as well, since it is stated that Itachi's Genjutsu doesn't work against shadow clones when he fought Team 7, and that is really all the counters and ways Minato can get past the Genjutsu that are solid. There is one other that's more sketchy to an extent, and it's just saying that Minato has some sort of Genjutsu resistance, because when he fought Obito, he looked at him straight in the eyes and nothing happened. There's two sides to this, with one being, like I just said, Minato has some sort of unknown Genjutsu resistance, and that's why he looked into Obito, someone who he noted is an Uchiha with Sharingan Genjutsu straight in the eyes and went unaffected, or that he's an idiot and just prayed and hoped that his opponent doesn't Genjutsu him. To me personally, I'm more on the side of Minato having some sort of Genjutsu resistance opposed to that of him just being dumb, but there could be some other factor like a limit on how many people Obito can Genjutsu at once, so I'm not going to just give Minato some concrete Genjutsu resistance, it's just something that I wanted to bring up. I should mention Gamma Bunta here because Minato does have him as a summon, and if he does use Big Man Bunta, that's another thing Itachi has to create a counter for, limiting his usage of Amaterasu, or really just anything he can that could get rid of Bunta. Also does hinder his health pretty drastically. I don't think this is some big end-all be-all type move from Minato. I don't like to bring up the summons usually, but let's say Minato does just stand up on Bunta. With how bad Itachi's eyesight is, I'd be hard pressed to say he could even see Minato up there. So this part doesn't really matter too much in the grand scheme of this video, but if I didn't bring up Bunta, someone would comment about him, so there's that. He's just another thing Itachi has to worry about in this fight. I'll go over wincons a final time here. Itachi Susanoo is more of a last resort option for him in character since this is going to be more of a fast-paced battle. I don't really see it coming into play since it will end quickly. If he does use it, it just turns into a Minato whack-a-mole situation where Itachi's swinging and missing and all Minato has to do is just wait out Itachi's stamina, which shouldn't be too much of an issue considering the dire state he's in. Amaterasu does pose a threat if he can correctly shoot it at the area Minato teleports to, but with the limited usage he does have of the jutsu, it's something I wouldn't count on happening, and a straight up Amaterasu will be dodged by Flying Raijin, so it's not really a factor in this fight as many people think it is. Genjutsu is the biggest thing for Itachi here since Minato has no outright for sure counter other than using shadow clones to deter Itachi from using it in the first place, or if you subscribe to the Minato has some sort of unknown Genjutsu resistance, then it turns into a non-factor. Tsukiyomi completely fries Minato though if it does hit, so don't get that twisted. If it's Tsukiyomi, then GG. Even though in the start of this video, and maybe the title too, I said it was a complete mismatch and wasn't close at all, it actually could go either way depending on how generous you are to what the character is. To me, I think Minato has the more clear-cut win based off of portrayal and his toolkit being greater than that of sick Itachi, and I find it more believable and consistent that the Yellow Flash can get his wincons off quicker and more reliably than Itachi. Hey, thank you all for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed. Leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more Naruto and Boruto content. I upload weekly, so check out my other videos. I guarantee there's something on my channel that you'll find interesting. And like always, have a good day.